All right, call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody here. We do have some special people in the audience here today. I see my dad, and I see my son, and I see my wife, and others, and it's great to have you all here. Before we get going with our meeting, I do want to ask Councillor Siemens to bring the opening, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to bring the last opening of this council. This is the last meeting of this council that's been together 2 terms, or the last 8 years here serving the city of Steinbach. We've been through 190 council meetings together, 80 SPC meetings, 16 study sessions, and 8 Christmas gatherings, as well as 8 FCM conferences held somewhere in Canada. We have watched the city grow by over 3,300 people, and growth is more than just people. We have grown by more than 1,480 households. Plus, in our 8 years, we've added 4 sets of traffic lights here in the city of Steinbach. Our budget's increased over 8 years by $10 million, and our land mass grew by 2,795 acres through annexation, and we spent roughly $160 million in those 8 years. But our term is over. All the signs on the boulevards indicate it, as those that want to be part of the city council moving forward. So just so you know, by my calculation, there are roughly 1,923 election signs up in Steinbach today. With the mayor candidates responsible for 1,200 of those. When I was first elected to city council in 2006, I was 50 years old, and I was the second youngest councillor elected. Only Councillor Swagstra was younger, a lot younger. When I was re-elected in 2010, I went from being the second youngest to the second oldest councillor. Now, as I look at my 4th term, I might be one of the oldest again. Of course, that depends on who gets elected. What is interesting that Mayor Gertzen, who's been on council for 16 years, and Councillor Swagstra, who's been on council for 12 years, are still not 50 years of age, after serving as much or longer than myself. It might make me feel older, but I say that I just matured a little bit later politically than they have. And even as I've aged, I've learned many things while spending 12 years on council. Here's a few of them. In my other life as a manager in a Steinbach business, I make decisions each day with a clear understanding of guidelines within policy and budget. Understanding decision-making power that as a councillor has, or maybe better off doesn't have, is very different. As a member of council, decision-making process to set policy and guideline for administration to follow. A completely different thought process. From day one, the biggest thing I needed to grasp was the difference between the words governance and management. Council isn't about the day-to-day details. Those belong to administration. But to provide policy that will move our community forward. And council does spend the majority of its time dealing with governance issues that the city faces. Making decisions with information presented, whether a public hearing, recommendations from administration, or through word of mouth, the information depends on its source. What I have learned is that I need to draw my own conclusions by doing appropriate homework, so I have a comfort level with all the information that I hear, and then I need to provide my own opinion on the issue as I vote. From my very first council meeting way back in 2006, my wife Audrey has coached me on how to dress properly by using the appropriate phrases as required. Are you kidding me? Not that shirt with those pants. Get back in there and do it again. Audrey has reminded me from time to time, you are making important decisions and you have to dress accordingly. Knowing each word is recorded, so words need to be chosen with care to present a clear message. It has been interesting in reviewing the meetings online to find all the words I stumble over or how many times the words. That includes interviews with the press. I've gained confidence in how and what to say, but at times it still comes out wrong. And I've appreciated both Daryl and Grant in the press, as usually they know what I intended to say, and that's what they print or record somehow, and and understand the words I use. So thank you to both of you for making me look good at times. I have learned to appreciate the difference between opinions between council members. Each of us has a different and sometimes unique opinion, often bringing a fresh view to help the decision-making process. Since this is the last meeting of council, it is not without some sadness that I see our time is running out. Mayor Gertzen, it's been a privilege to serve under your watch. I've appreciated your leadership, your coaching at different times, and your commitment to Steinbach. Each member of council has a different life skill and experience that you've brought to each meeting and to every issue. Over the last 8 years, it's been a privilege to serve with each of you. I've appreciated that as council members, we've been able to address the topic at hand and not made it a personal issue, even when discussions became loud and passionate. We have been a team, and I will miss the team building that occurred after every council meeting when we met somewhere else and talked about the very many different things. For each of you running in this election, I wish you all the best on the election coming up on October 24th. And Mayor Gertzen and Councillor Carrie Penner, in your case, wherever your plans take you, all the best. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Siemens. We do have the agenda in front of us. There is one additional, and we'll put that on 12A, and that's in regards to the Board of Revision. And my understanding also that administration does have one other recommendation, and that will be 9I that we will be adding as well. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Swagstra. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have the minutes in front of us from October 2nd, regular council meeting. We've had a chance to review those. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Fair, second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Any questions? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. There's no business arising from the minutes, although I did just see that Councillor Siemens, you're wearing a very nice button today.
This button represents, Mr. Mayor, your first time you ran for AMM. You were all obligated to wear that button. I thought I would honor you by wearing.
Wow. Thank you. You will have no use for that very shortly. All right. We will now move to the public hearings. I'm going to close the council meeting and open the public hearing. Is in regards to bylaw 2102 on page 5, Harmony Lane Public Reserve closing. Mr. Warkentine, are we also going to be doing the other bylaw at the same time in regards to Harmony Lane?
Yes, and also would recommend considering, or the public hearing include variance application V-2018-24.
All right. Good. So to be clear, this is a public hearing in regards to all three aspects of the Harmony Lane. There is the Harmony Lane Public Reserve closing, there is the rezoning of Harmony Lane, and then there's the variance in regards to Harmony Lane. So Mr. Warkentine, I'll ask you to introduce all of those, please.
Certainly. This is a public hearing for all three files, as you just mentioned, and I will just read a brief description of all of them. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. Firstly, the public hearing relates to proposed public reserve closing bylaw 2102 due to various lot configurations of proposed subdivision file number 4451-2018-7990 that Council conditionally approved earlier this summer. The applicant is applying to close the public reserve. The public reserve will be reopened as part of the proposed subdivision file that I just mentioned. Secondly, the rezoning application proposes to rezone the subject properties that front along Harmony Lane from A, agricultural to RSF, residential single family, and RLD, residential low density, and to rezone properties currently zoned RSF, residential single family, to RLD, residential low density, to allow for residential development. And thirdly, the variance application, file V-2018-25, is to allow an overall site width of 186 feet, whereas the A agricultural zone requires a minimum site width of 600 feet. This is as a result of the residual existing agricultural parcel that would remain following the proposed subdivision. Overall, this application has been applied for by the same applicant, and and as far as the public reserve closing, as I mentioned, the applicant is involved in a multi-phase residential development in the area. The subdivision related to this land is presently in process, and in order to proceed with the planned subdivision development, the public reserve must be initially closed by the bylaw, but will then be reopened as part of the subdivision. The required public hearing for the public reserve closing may be held concurrently with the two files. However, with the order of decisions that are required as part of these multiple land use applications, the public reserve closing bylaw needs to be dealt with first. Secondly, with the rezoning application, this proposed rezoning is consistent with policy as provided in the city's official community plan. The proposed rezoning along with the plan development is also consistent with the approved long-term concept plan for the area. Specifically, the developer intends to change the designation of 3 existing lots created in a previous subdivision with the RSF, the residential single-family designation, to an RLD, residential low-density designation. And the developer also proposes to create 9 new lots, also with an RSF and an RLD designations. Generally, administration has reviewed the applications for those 2 files and also for the proposed variance application. Recommendation for all 3 particular files is for council to firstly, subject to any new information that may be provided at the public hearing, consider second reading to Public Reserve Closing Bylaw 2102. With respect to rezoning bylaw 2103, also subject to any new information that may be provided, to consider second reading for that proposed rezoning bylaw. And thirdly, with the variance application, recommendation is that council consider all information with respect to the public hearing. However, postpone or delay decision on the matter until both the public reserve closing bylaw and rezoning bylaw have been dealt with.
Very good, thank you. Is that clear as mud to everybody? All right, do we have a representative of the applicant here today? Thank you. All right, is there anyone here wishing to object or have any questions on this file?
Yep.
Okay, please take the podium, state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Steinbach City Council. My name is Gil Drollet. My wife and I recently purchased 216 Chrysler Gate. So that would be affected up there. When we were in the process of purchasing this home, we had done our research, and we, with our agent, asked the seller, and he provided us the information that there would be green space behind us, according to your plans. We would in fact have 10 feet worth of access to the green space. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but to us it is. It gives us access to an area that otherwise we wouldn't have access to. It had a huge influence on us purchasing this property. And after the sale had gone through, then that's when we got the letter from the planning and zoning indicating the developer's request for change. Like I said, this change has I think for the most part it really only affects our property because that's where they will want to push back 10 feet and eliminate our green space access. So I would certainly like to officially oppose this motion or zoning or whatever we want to call it and request that the council deny it and stay stay true to what was decided when this neighborhood was designed and approved. So essentially, if you look up there, my property would be the one on the, there's the red 2, and my property is on the right-hand side there. So they want to move, basically that red line is going to move back 10 feet. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's going to move back directly to the shed and eliminate any access to that. So like for us, that was a huge, huge bonus when we did purchase that property. So it wasn't the sole deciding factor, but it was huge. So
Thank you very much.
thank you very much, guys.
Good. Is there anyone else here wishing to object or have any questions on this file? Yeah, please take the podium, state your name and address.
Kim Andre, and we live at 218 Chrysler Gate. So just moving that back that much on 216 is going to affect ours also.
All right. So just to clarify from administration, can you point out where that one would be?
Yeah,
Yeah, right where that hand was.
right there,
Okay, so that would be there.
that's the shed in the back.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yep.
Thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to object or have any questions on this file? Anyone else wishing to object or have any questions? Does the applicant wish to speak or address any of the concerns? Or representative of the applicant?
Say my name and stuff?
Yes, you do?
I'm Keith Unger, a partner of the ownership group, the new ownership group of that land, which we took possession of in July, so I don't know, when did you take possession?
We took possession in October.
I'll ask you to direct everything
Sorry,
towards the chair, please.
we took possession in July, so when we did take possession, it was recommended to us that to avoid variances for the structures that would be built on those lots, it would be smart to add another 10 feet there so that we wouldn't have issues down the road. So, so I don't know if there was an oversight on the previous developer that designed it. I'm not sure, but this is to correct as we go forward, just to avoid future variances.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or the representative? Do you have a question for the applicant?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead,
Yes,
Councillor
yes,
Fair.
Mr. Mayor. Through you. That 10 feet that we're talking about here, would that significantly alter that, or you said it was recommended by?
Whoever, the designer and the engineer and actually the previous developer. So
So is it possible to develop it the way that it was designed initially with that 10 feet, as some people believed that was going to be?
I think with the request of a few variances along the way, probably. There were a few decisions made here, and I would love the previous developer to be here as well to discuss why the decisions are made this way. But.
All right, thank you. Councillor Funk, please.
Mr. Mayor, to the applicant, is that the regular shape green space, will that always stay a green space?
Correct.
Okay, so would variances necessarily be a problem if that's always a green space?
I'm not sure.
All right, any further questions for the applicant? Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing for all three aspects. We're talking about not only the public lane and reserve closing, but we're also talking about the Harmony Lane rezoning, as well as the variation. Is there anyone else wishing to object or have any questions on any of those three? Seeing none, I'll,
Okay.
Councillor Fair.
Mr. Mayor, we didn't get an opportunity to talk to the objector.
Would you like to? Okay,
Possible to-
all right. Mr. Roulette, if you can
Yes.
take the podium again, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. When you purchased that property, you obviously bought it from the previous developer.
Yes.
And was there anything on paper about what you're talking about here, or is it?
We discussed that through our agent, and then we also discussed that actually, when we came and we did our walkthrough with the developer as well. I believe the developer would have been the same person that was selling the house on that lane, right?
All right, no, please, everything
Sorry.
comes towards the.
Yeah. Sorry. But, yeah, like we discussed through our agent, and, we trusted that we were supplied the best information. We also, stopped off here. We also looked at the maps and everything, because there was also another zoning thing that happened previously. So we looked on the maps that were issued by City of Steinbach that were posted there to confirm that green space as well, so.
All right, thank you. Does that answer the question you had?
It does.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, do you have a question for?
I have a question for administration, and it may be for the applicant as well, depending on the answer.
Okay, I'll keep the public hearing open. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very specifically because the question has come up in regards to the public reserve and the 10 feet. If we were not to grant that, if we were to keep it as it is, what is the impact on the developments in terms of the feasibility? And I'll ask you to administration, and then the applicant may want to comment as well, because I think it's an important question here. What is the specific impact on the development if we were not to make that change?
From what I understand, the concerns of council's considering its options with respect to this file, because it's a very specific application, I would like an opportunity to confirm, but from as I see it at the moment, City Council has the opportunity to deny second reading or to simply or possibly adjourn the public hearing and reopen to consider second reading at a future date. The other option would be to approve with an amendment, but amendments would be challenging, especially if the developer has not had an opportunity to consider the implications.
Thank you. Mr. Workin, I'll interject here. Mr. Workin, there is a complicating factor, and that this is the last meeting of this council with this public hearing, and to hand this over to a future council that hasn't gone through the public hearing may cause some issues. Maybe clarify that.
The difficulty is City Council has already conditionally approved the subdivision application, which involves the reopening of the public reserve. This bylaw is only considering the closing of the public reserve. Presumably, if council denies the closing of the public reserve, the rezoning of the existing lots could conceivably continue. The variance could conceivably continue. However, the developer would be faced with a subdivision application which would not meet the original intent and possibly would require variance applications for the lots that would not be altered.
Thank you. Further question?
I'd like to, if the applicant would be willing to answer the same question.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Unger, I'll ask you to take the podium again, please. Go ahead.
Sure. The question is that if we were not to approve the reconfiguration in regards to the public reserve, because the concern's been raised in terms of those 10 feet, if that were not to be approved, what is the impact on the developments?
You know what, without doing my research, when you take possession of something a few months ago and you're picking up from where somebody left off, I couldn't answer, other than slowing it down and very likely avoiding having something ready on time for.
Thank you. All right, thank you. You have a further question before I close the public hearing?
Yes, I do.
All right, to whom would you like to address that?
I would like to address this to administration.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is a case here where through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a case where we have actually two innocent parties here that are both kind of caught in a crossfire, and I'm wondering whether this would be, because it's going to be going, if there's an objection on it, it's going to have to go to the municipal board to wait it, right? Doesn't have to, right now, because there's only one? Okay. I would actually like to see this thing, maybe reviewed and see if we can resolve this something to everybody's satisfaction.
Okay, so
I don't
is
know
there,
if we could
is
table
there,
it.
is there a question
Yeah.
for
Is it possible,
administration?
could we table it till the next meeting?
As the public hearing is still open, the option would be for council to adjourn the public hearing and reopen it at a later date, if there's new evidence that would be part of this application.
Thank you. Councillor Penner?
I have a question through you to administration.
Thank you.
If we made an amendment, so just the first lot, kept the original line, and then the remaining lot added the 10, is that too complicated? So it allow the current homeowner to continue to have their access? So it would impact one lot, and yes, the developer may have to come for the one variance, but then it wouldn't impact the whole row.
Go ahead.
As this is a public reserve closing, I would have to research to find out what the differences are as compared to a rezoning, because it is a different application and it deals with lot lines specifically. At this point, I am not certain what the implications could be.
Thank you. Any further questions before I close, or if so indicated by councillors here that you want me to adjourn rather than close? Councillor Penner?
Yes. Do I need to make that a motion?
No, I'm asking you to just state what you're
Oh,
saying
yes.
yes to.
I would like to adjourn and reopen it at another time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Funk?
I think so too, Mr. Mayor. There's too many variables here, and the two parties are quite innocent in this, and I'd like to adjourn to do the research so that we can, because I do like the suggestion put forward by Councillor Penner, just adjusting one lot line.
Are there any further thoughts from this side before I make a decision?
I'd be okay with adjourning as well. It complicates it substantially, but I think there are other options here at play, and the developer and the city both needs to know what all the options are, whether there's a possibility for a...
All right, I'm going to adjourn the public hearing. Administration may, over the course of the next number of minutes, actually have additional information. We may choose to reopen it tonight. We may choose not to. I'll make that call if there is additional information, and then we'll go from there. So I will adjourn the public hearing at this time. We will allow administration to have some time to go through this, and then we will go from there. All right. Then we will not make a decision at this time since it's only adjourned and not closed. We will now move to the reports and recommendations from the city manager. 8A, land purchase on 380 Hanover Street, page 36. Mr. Workentine.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a parcel of land that is located at 380 Hanover Street. Administration, through strategy adopted by council many years ago, has continued to work with existing landowners in the area and to propose the city offer to purchase on a number of different land parcels over the past 20 to 25 years. This particular parcel at 380 Hanover Street is a parcel that the current owners are prepared to sell. The city has made an offer, a conditional offer that has been accepted for the amount of $280,000 with a possession date of June 26, 2019. The sketch is shown on the overhead. As far as the parcels of land currently existing nearby the existing parcel, the city of Steinbach already owns 2 parcels to the north and 2 parcels to the south of the subject property. And with respect to the overall offer to purchase that has been provided in the agenda package, recommendation from administration is that council approve the purchase.
Thank you. Council, how would you like to proceed?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Penner. Second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, this is a continuation of the long-term strategy to purchase land in the downtown area so that there is a large block of available land that can be used for any other purpose, such as residential high density or commercial entities, hotels, whatever needs may come into the downtown area. This is part of the long-term vision, and I believe this is a good piece since we do own the two lots directly to the north and the south.
Thank you. Councillor Penner.
Yeah, further to Councillor Penner's comments, this is really the last key piece we need in that area, and we have the desired land that we've been working towards getting. So I am appreciative that we can do this, and hopefully now that we own most of this, that we can start coming up with a plan in the next term, assuming we're elected, or the next council can start planning for what that land would be used for.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's no surprise, I will not vote in favor of this. The only good thing about it is it's the last one. During this election campaign, as I've been walking around, I have not heard any support for the development that we anticipated at one time that we would be doing downtown. And so I believe that we've spent a fair bit more than our budget allowed in the last 3+ years. And so I would rather see that money go somewhere else.
Thank you. Further discussion? Anything in closing?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Penner, go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate Councillor Fair's comments. However, I believe that it's up to council to have long-term vision. And sometimes long-term vision requires several different councils following the vision of the previous councils. And that is a good thing, because otherwise there would be no continuity in our city planning. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Council, we have a question in front of us. This is obviously the last piece of the puzzle which has been said here tonight. This is something significant. This is there are significant portions of this block now owned by the city if this does pass, and we will end up with potential for some significant planning that has really taken planning from a number of councils back to us present. And this is really one of those major pieces that will allow us to move forward with some plans here, whether it's recreation, whether it's other plans, whether it's mixed use, whether it's, but some sort of development. And I think the next council will have a great opportunity if this land is in the hands of the city. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Opposed, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Fair, I didn't.
I wasn't gonna let you forget.
I know you weren't, I know. All right, we have the administration points here, 9A. We have the accounts payable on the back of the book. Can I have a motion to approve the accounts payable? Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Fair. Any discussion?
Nothing further, sir.
Call for the question. All those in favor? We have the financial statement ending September 30th. If you've had a chance to review those, can I have a motion, please? Councillor Fair, seconded by Councillor Penner to approve. All those in favor? Carried. We have minor subdivisions on page 43 listed there. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Funk. Further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. We have bylaw 2099, our official community plan. This is on page 44. Mr. Workentine, we did get this back. Would you say this is record time?
As far as the response from the Minister of Municipal relations, I would say so. That was a very quick turnaround and response, and very pleased to see that it was positive.
Council, this official community plan changes are really, we've worked for some time on these. We've worked on these when it came to the expansion of our boundaries, and so to have this come back to us and that we can actually finish this off as a council, I think is appropriate. And I'm pleased that it's on our last meeting that we get to do it. Didn't have to be our last meeting, but it is our last meeting to get this, and obviously the office wanted to expedite that for us, and so pleased to see that. Can I have a motion then to approve third reading? Councillor Swagstra.
I'll move that we approve third reading.
Thank you. Councillor Fair seconds that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you had noted, this is something that council has worked on for some time. This is our official community plan. This sets the overall planning direction of the city. It states what the intent is in terms of the different sections of the city as far as development. And there are some important changes here because the city has annexed some significant land from the rural municipality of Hanover, and we need to make sure that our official community plan is up to date. And so what the community plan now reflects, it reflects the whole city, the city that includes the land that we've annexed. And so there are obviously some changes to reflect that. There are some other minor revisions that we've made as well. I believe it's a good document, and it sets the city in a good direction for the next number of years.
Thank you. Further discussion? Anything in closing? All those in favor? Carried. We now have the bylaw 2100 and the zoning bylaw, and this is also reflective of the new boundaries. Page 52. How would council like to proceed? Councillor Siemens.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Fair. Any go ahead, Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our zoning bylaw, new zoning bylaw that will also take into effect the same boundaries as the community plan, but these are the bylaws around all of those things. And we made a lot of, we reviewed all the zoning bylaws that were in place, and they're all mentioned. We won't read through them, but one that will need, I would like council to consider, future council considers to review the parking, do a complete parking review in the central business district. I think that is too restrictive, but at this point I move to approve it, but just as a heads up that at some point in the near future we need to review do a parking review in that area.
Thank you. Who seconded that? Sorry, Councillor Fair. Anything further? Anything further from council? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. All right, council. Now those new sections of the city will now actually have a zoning bylaw that they can adhere to. They do not have to revert back to the RM of Hanover zoning bylaw. They can now use ours. So that's good news for them. It provides clarity. We have 9F, the building permits for September on page 63. We continue to see growth in the city with over $4 million of permits. Can I have someone move the resolution on that page, please? Councillor Funk, second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have business licenses on page 65 that you've already reviewed. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Swagstra, second by Councillor Funk. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? We have the E911 service agreement on page 66. Mr. Warkentine, do you have anything to add?
Just generally, this agreement for services that the city has with the City of Brandon to provide 911 services does get reviewed and renewed from time to time. This is just a renewal, requesting council's consideration to approve.
Thank you. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Swagstra. Any discussion?
Just briefly, it's always good to partner with other municipalities, especially in terms of emergency services.
Thank you. Further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have 9I, and that is administration's addition. Mr. Warkentine.
Yes, just for council's information, due to the municipal election coming up next week, The first proposed meeting with the new council is normally scheduled for the first Tuesday of the month. That would be November the 6th. The inaugural meeting of the new council is a scheduled meeting that is already set. However, in previous years where an election has been held, the first meeting in November has been canceled to allow for proper orientation of the new council. This includes, for example, a formal session during the first week of November, and also coupled with some internal meetings. For that reason, my recommendation is for council's consideration to cancel the regular council meeting of November the 6th.
Thank you. Council? Councillor Fair? Move to approve that recommendation. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Funk? Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Council, I think that's a wise move. When it comes to that orientation, it's happening on the 7th and 8th. After that orientation, it would be appropriate then to take the seats at this table. Any questions of council? Councillor Swagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to introduce a motion. And if I get a seconder, I will then make my case for the motion. You're going to miss this. The surprise motion, near the end of the meeting.
By the way, if you're here, if you haven't been here before, this is not what we're supposed to do, but okay. Go ahead.
I'm hoping to get support for this motion. We'll see what I'm able to do. Whereas Chris Gertzen was first elected mayor of Steinbach in October 2006. Whereas Chris Gertzen has served with distinction as mayor for the last 12 years. Whereas the position of mayor is both time-consuming and demanding. Therefore, be it resolved that Steinbach City Council officially express its appreciation to Mayor Chris Gertzen for his tireless hard work on behalf of our city. Be it further resolved that Steinbach City Council express its gratitude to Mayor Chris Gertzen's wife, Anna Lee, and his children, Otto and Naomi, for their support of his service to the city. I so move.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Fair. Thank you. Go ahead if you want to speak further.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want this to go. I want this to be. I don't want a 4-3 vote. I'm going to make the best case I possibly can. So, Mr. Mayor, it's been 12 years, and a bit of a trip down memory lane. You were first elected mayor back in October 2006. I was first elected to council at the time, as was Councillor Siemens. You're the youngest mayor since the town was officially formed. You were 32 years old. You had a very forward-looking campaign, and I think I remember the 3 planks. I'm sure you do as well. Planning for our long-term growth, building on our foundation, engaging the vitality of Steinbach's youth. And I think I can safely say that, that you have achieved those things. You have planned. You have led Steinbach in a good direction. And I will make it clear that I supported you in 2006, and I've never regretted that choice. I have never regretted supporting you. The mayor has to lead by consensus. And one thing that's sort of underestimated in terms of how challenging this job is that it's sometimes assumed, well, you're the mayor, just get it done, just do things. And it's not so simple. The mayor has one vote. The mayor has the power of influence. The mayor has to bring people together. And when I consider your strengths, Mr. Mayor, one of your greatest strengths is the ability to lead by consensus. And the ability to lead effective meetings, giving everyone a proper say, those things that are absolutely essential. And I can safely say that, that as a member of council, I've always had the opportunity to express my views. I've always had the opportunity to make sure that I'm heard. And I know that other members of council feel the same way. And the reason that we can truthfully say that is how you lead. You do seek to lead by consensus. You do seek to take into consideration what other members of council have to say. And you do always consider, how do we put the city of Steinbach first? I have never doubted it, that you put the city of Steinbach first. When we're dealing with a contentious issue, you've often asked the question, what is in the best interest of the city? What do we need to do here? How do we make sure that we put the city in the best light possible? And, you know, there have been times, Mr. Mayor, where we have disagreed once in a while on a few issues. But one thing that I appreciate, and I want to make it very public here in terms of, there has never been a time, despite whatever we've disagreed on in some of the issues, that I have not felt 100% comfortable walking into your office and talking, not just about that issue, but at anything. There has never been a time in the 12 years that I've been on council where I felt, you know what, I can't communicate with Chris. There is no way, the mayor, there's no way we can talk. There has never been that type of time, because you aren't the type of person to take things personally. You're not the type of person to say, you know what, I can't work with certain people anymore because they disagree with me on this. You know, we're able to say, you know what, on this issue we disagree, on this other one that we agree. You know, the high pressure approach, that's not your style. Your style is to lead by consensus, and it's appreciated, it really is. And I also want to add here that there have been times where I've been wrong. There have been times where I have said things that in the public where I have criticized you, and sometimes I've gone too far, and I want to publicly acknowledge that, because those things, that shouldn't happen. It is fine to disagree, but things should never be personal. And I also wanted to say that I noticed that you have a number of family members here, and that's great to see. It's good to see Annalie and Otto, and it's good to see your father here as well. It's great that they just happened to decide to come to a council meeting. This is really good timing. And I want to say to them, thank you so much for sharing your father and your husband and your father with the city of Steinbach, because Steinbach is a better place because of his leadership. And family is always most important. And Mr. Mayor, you put your family first. Your family, it's also a sacrifice, you know, in terms of time. And so we appreciate the fact that you've let us have your husband and your dad with us here at City Council. So, Mr. Mayor, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I appreciate the work that you have done. And Steinbach is a better city as a result of your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a very weird spot to be in. Thank you, Councillor Spector. I really appreciate those words. Thank you. I'm not asking you to say anything.
We're not done.
Don't cut off the debate.
Let's carry on.
Does anyone wish to speak any further?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes. I think on this one here, I want to go on your first name basis. I don't want to call you Mr. Mayor, because I like to address you personally, you know. And I was thinking as I was preparing for this, and I said some words that came to my mind when I think of Chris. And I think of a calm. I think of calculated, thoughtful, considerate, balanced, a good leader, confident. I could go on, but I'll just leave it at that. I appreciate your sensible and quiet responses when things might well have had the potential to escalate to something significant. You were a great mediator and kept things in council meetings on track, and sometimes exercised grace when it was appropriate. I have appreciated working with you in the best interest of this great city that we've had the privilege of serving as elected representatives. And I was going to say some of them are by acclamation, but I don't know what that's like. So I believe your involvement with AMM and FCM has raised the visibility of our growing city's needs, and I know that's also taken a lot of your time, and may have even helped garner some support for some of our projects. And I think as a city, I think we need to acknowledge that and just tell you that we appreciate the time and effort that you put into that. So, and now on behalf of my wife, Matilda, and myself, we wish you all the best in whatever you endeavor to do going forward. I trust you will first enjoy some time with Annalie and your young family. And I want to just add a little bit too. I've served on the St. Rat River Conservation District with your father, and I can see where you got your temperament from. So, and I've appreciated serving with him there as well. So I got the benefit of serving with father and son. So thanks, Chris. Thanks, Annalie, Otto, Naomi, for sharing your husband and father with the citizens of Steinbach and permitting him to serve the city for the past 16 years, first on council and then as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Penner.
Not so fast.
This is not what I planned. I like fast meetings.
Well, that's one of the things I'm going to mention in my remarks.
Okay.
There's one thing that stands out to me, one thing that I will carry with me about these past two terms, is that while council may not have agreed on everything, we are always able to respect each other as people, and that starts at the top with our leader, Mayor Chris Gertzen. In fact, it goes further than just the council chambers. At any and every event that I've attended with the mayor, he has always been gracious, kind, and patient with everyone who wants to talk to him. He's been an excellent example on how to treat people. In fact, he's an example of true tolerance, that in spite of differences, we could get along and work together. Another thing I appreciate greatly is the excellent way in which you handle and chair meetings. They are efficient, they are smooth, you keep things rolling, and as Councillor Fair alluded to, you actually diffuse situations that could otherwise escalate. And I really appreciate that. I think that is a gift, not something that everybody has, and so I'm going to miss that. Council has accomplished much under the mayor's leadership, but I will pick one thing that I think will stand the test of time and be a part of this mayor's legacy. And that is the sheer growth of Steinbach during the mayor's time in office. Steinbach has probably close to doubled in this time. Steinbach's growth has been a huge challenge in terms of infrastructure, yet the mayor was always sure to keep it as the primary focus. This is tough to do when there is so much pressure to spend money on other projects where we could have cut infrastructure spending, spend on the more flashy projects, I guess I'll call them. So I commend him for that. I commend him for seeing the big picture and knowing where we needed to keep our priorities, and I think that will stand the test of time with your legacy. So I appreciate that, and I know residents do too. I can sincerely say it has been an honor and a privilege to serve under you for the past 8 years and to work with you, and I wish you and your family all the best going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Fair. Thank you. All right. All right, Councillor Funk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too went down memory lane, just like Councillor Swagstra, and I remember our first meeting. And imagine you remember it too. It was one evening at your previous store, Main Bread and Butter, and we talked about me buying your store. And that is where you won me over. That is where I started supporting you when you ran for council. I supported you when you ran for mayor too. I voted for you every time. And I'm actually glad I did not buy your business because of where you brought your business to. And you did the same thing in your business. You did that for Steinbach. You always brought Steinbach forward. And I'm glad how our businesses could work together and how you have become my best deli customer. And this is how it is, you know. When you make sausage, someone's got to buy it. And that's where we work together. And all these times you've been so fair over the 8 years. Every time when we disagreed, the next morning the order came in just like normal. It was business as usual. You never took it personally. And we could sit down the next few days and we could sit in your office and we could hash it out. And that is something I've already respected of you. And also, I do want to tell you, you've taught me how to chair meetings, and you've given me opportunity to chair boards, and I've been able to push meetings along, and we've been able to get things done. And through your example of getting things done, I've been able to do that too. So as a mentor, I've appreciated working underneath you. I'm honored to be here for 8 years with you. And I just wish you all the best in your family. Annalie, thank you for giving him to us so that he can mentor us and teach us and lead our community. And Steinbach's a better place because you decided to run. Thank you for council one day.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Councillor Siemens, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Mayor, what else can I add to all the compliments that you've received and well-deserved? It has been, I said it earlier, and it's been a pleasure and an honor serving under your watch, Mr. Mayor. I've enjoyed the different times that we've spent together when we talk, when we travel together a few times, and when we talk about city business. But more so, then that goes into family and work, because you see our council family as family, an extended family, and I've always appreciated that. I've really enjoyed the times that we've traveled together, especially the trip to Whistler and during our very first term together. and to Flin Flon just a few weeks ago. And then there has been many other great trips to various cities in Canada in between that. But, you know, it's about some of the numbers too. Just to highlight a few numbers for you. Our population has grown by over 7,000 since you were first elected in 2000. Our budget has more than doubled since 2002. And we've added 2,700 plus acres through annexation. But more than that, we've added 3,000 households in your watch, Mr. Mayor. And of course, we've added 8 signal lights. We have 16 now, you know.
Yeah.
And as mayor, you've chaired over 288 council meetings. And you have also chaired 120 SPC meetings. A lot of meetings, sir, that you have sat with the gavel in your hand.
Feels like more.
And you needed to manage a group of councillors that each has their own agenda. And you've done so well. As stated earlier, you've led by consensus, and you've done a great job in keeping everyone in line, well, mostly. But it has been well done. Whomever replaces you will have big chair to fill. One of the major changes you made, our very first meeting that Councillor Swagter and myself attended, was the structure changes on your first term on council as a mayor. And so you were a new mayor, you had 4 new councillors, and we made structure change. It was positive change, it was short term, that has turned into 12 years now. And as proof of how positive that was, many other municipal councils have adopted similar structure changes. You will be missed at AMM and many other places that you represented Steinbach as a mayor. You do see the big picture as mentioned earlier, and I've always appreciated that. It's been a very interesting and a very enjoyable 12 years sitting on City Council with you. I will miss your leadership as well. And I wish you all the best as you begin your next term, wherever Annalie assigns you to.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Penner.
One more.
All right.
Thank you. So I don't agree with any of my colleagues, actually. No, I'm joking.
There's room for dissent.
Yeah. I appreciate this opportunity to publicly express my appreciation to you, Mr. Mayor, as you complete your last responsibilities here at City Hall. As a public leader, you have continually demonstrated your ability to represent our city with integrity, humility, and diplomacy, and I appreciate that. You set high standards for the office of mayor, and you sought innovative and creative ways to achieve those objectives. You guided this council, which wasn't always easy, through 8 years of setting agendas, meeting challenges, and finding solutions. Anyone who serves on any kind of board, organization, or committee understands the critical importance of relying on the chairperson to motivate, guide, and manage debate, maintain a rational discussion, and set the tone for thoughtful and well-supported decision-making. And you have done that. As mayor, you often got the brunt of public criticism, even on a decision that council made, and you faced media and public scrutiny for our actions and our decisions, even if you had not agreed with the decision. This council has had great debates, and I have enjoyed them. You also worked with community members, organizations, and city staff to ensure the best possible results in sometimes very challenging and sensitive situations. Often your efforts were behind the scenes, and many times people did not realize what you were all accomplishing. You were lobbying for more funds, services, or new and progressive legislation that would benefit not just our city, but the entire province. You could be relied upon to dialogue with different levels of government and represent our city with tenacity and tact in a way that made us very proud of your leadership and ability. I first met Chris through his business at Maine Bread and Butter, kind of like Councillor Funk. And it was my passion for the chocolate jujubes, I think, that drew me there. But as I went there and as time went on, we became friends. and we found we had city politics in common, and that was a wonderful connection. I'm very glad that happened. And after a while, I became friends with your wife, Annalie, and the children, Otto and Naomi, and of course, your father. And I have been very privileged to continue that friendship. Thank you. Their family has contributed to the growth and success of our community as much as you have, your entire family. And your sacrifice is noted and appreciated. Thank you. All the best to you, Chris, and to your family as you continue onward to the next chapter in your life. Whatever you do, I'm sure you will continue to meet it with the same honor and integrity you brought to this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess you, normally you get the last word. You made a motion,
I
but,
think this one's going to pass.
all right. All right. Well, normally I get told about what's on the agenda, and I create the agenda with administration, and so this one I haven't. I didn't know. But I want to say thank you to all of you for your kind words. They're generous, and parts of it are true. But the reality is that we do this because we care about our communities. Whether we're in those chairs or this chair or the chairs in our administrative offices, people do their work, and we all do our work because we love our community. We want to see it prosper. We want to see it change. We want to keep the good things and find new good things to add. And that was the goal and the mission of why I started on council. And I think through all of our work collectively, we were able to clearly do that. We've got a city that is looked at as a model for the province. It's a model beyond the province for a variety of things. And it's because of our citizens and the work that they do in their community, in their whether it's not-for-profits, whether they're businesses, or whether it's with their own families. But it also has to do with our leadership. And the city is led by a group of 7 individuals who get put together not by choice. Who on earth would create a corporation that runs, I don't know, $30 million worth of sales, and they put people together that don't choose to be together? But that's the system we're in. And so we have to make it work. And you know what, I'm very proud of all of you and how you've tried to make that work. You've been assertive in your beliefs, you've been assertive in what you stand for, and you've been flexible when needed to be. And I just so appreciate that, because that makes my life a little bit easier, because I can only bend elbows so and so far back before we actually get something done. But I really do appreciate all of you, and I appreciate the previous councils that I got to work with as well. 4 terms with quite a number of different council members, and I learned a lot, and I have more to learn. But I do just want to say thank you to you as council, as this council, who have served with 2 terms, on supporting me and working together as we best knew how. And so I'm going to miss all of you a lot. I'm going to miss doing this a lot. But there's a time and place for everything. I want to say a special thank you to my wife and my son and my daughter Naomi. They have put up with a lot of Tuesday nights and many other nights where I haven't been there. And I look forward to next Tuesday. Actually, it won't be next Tuesday, but it'll be the following Tuesday, where I get to look online later to see what happened at a council meeting. And I'll be there with them and enjoying my time with them, and possibly another one along the way. We'll see what the timing is. So I want to say thank you, Otto, for having patience with me when I say I have another meeting to go to. And Annalie, you've had patience all the way through. I haven't even told you about some meetings that I go to, and she just says, I assumed you were at one. And my dad is here too, and he's also been an incredible influence on how I do business. And so when I was 5 years old, he became a council member and he was there for over 30 years. And Dad, you were a great example of service And that is the example that I used in this process, so thank you. To the citizens of Steinbach, just a great big thank you. They have been so, you go to many communities and they say, boy, I'm just being beat up all the time. Well, it does happen to some mayors and some council members. But I have to say, our citizens have by far been so supportive. They're encouraging. They stop me and they grab my arm and say, Chris, I'm praying for you. Or they say, Chris, I really don't agree with what you did on that one, but I'm sure you had a good reason for it. And they're supportive, and they've been really good. And so I want to say thank you to the citizens of Steinbach for supporting this council and myself as mayor over the last 12 years. This has been a real honor, and I will miss it. I'll leave it at that. So, thank you. I guess I have to call for the question, eh? Do I vote?
We'll let you abstain from this.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, now I actually have work to do again here. Did that give administration enough time to actually look through that?
Actually, you did.
All right. Well, Council, before we move through this, actually, let's move through a few other items, and then we'll go back to that. We will reconvene the public hearing. We have 11A. We have the Association of Manitoba Municipalities 2018 invitation regarding RCMP meetings. This is on page 73. Council, would you like to send the next council to visit with the RCMP? I think we'll take it as information. We have a very good relationship with our RCMP. We have very good communication, so we'll leave it at that. We have 11B. We have the Manitoba Municipal Relations Cabinet Ministers Meeting request at AMM Convention. I think we'll take that as information as well. All right, I will move back to reopening the public hearing. Sorry, before I do that?
Yeah, just a point of information.
Go ahead,
perhaps.
Mr. Workentine.
Just was reviewing the Planning Act, also had an opportunity to speak briefly with the developers just to understand possible concerns that they may have. Generally, I see that there is three options that Council has with respect to this development file. One is proceed with second reading. The Planning Act is very clear that a consideration for a public reserve closing does require approval by the minister. However, I have not been able to locate any provision for a municipal board hearing if there is an objection. My understanding is if council does proceed to give its second reading, it would proceed to the minister's office for consideration. Secondly, council could continue to proceed with the adjournment. However, if that is the case, I would recommend that City Council select or identify a particular date that the public hearing would be reconvened so that all parties in this meeting would be there. Thirdly, an option that Council could choose is also to deny second reading. At that point, the bylaw would be dead.
All right, thank you. So, Council, we have heard what our options are. So I will ask not all three questions. I will ask the simple question. Would you like to reopen the public hearing and proceed with any further discussion, close it and come to a conclusion? Or would you like to adjourn it, continue having it adjourned to a specific time and date for the future council to consider?
Question for administration.
Go ahead, Councillor Funk.
Mr. Mayor. Question for administration. If we choose to to have second reading, can we make amendment to the property lines at this point?
Simple answer would be no. Not without restarting the entire process over again.
Okay, thank you. Any further suggestions or guidance when it comes to Councillor Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to administration, so just to be clear, do we have any new information in regards to in terms of feasibility on the development, if we were to not, if the lot lines were not to change.
My understanding from the information that the applicants did provide during the public hearing is they aren't able to provide specifics. And because any amendments to the proposed public reserve closing would also affect the subdivision application, there are a number of different factors that the applicant would need to consider. Because they involve surveys and lot dimensions, I'm not sure if there is enough information presented that there could be a reasonable conclusion reached.
All right. Another question?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask administration one more question here.
Go ahead.
If we decide that okay, if the previous developer would have proceeded with whatever development, then obviously it would have been acceptable to the neighborhood, there wouldn't be an issue. Is there any reason that you can see that it was changed on? Was it something that was precipitated through our office, or was it something that the developer drove the change, or can you clarify that for me?
All right.
I can only comment on what the applicants provided when they were at the podium. They indicated that the previous developer that they have taken over the development from had proposed the change in lot lines for reasons of overall development considerations.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to then, I will open the public hearing one more time. I'll take it out of adjournment. We will have any further discussion, and then we can choose at that time to either re-adjourn at a specific time, or we can choose to close it and take action. I'll leave it up to you as council. I'll reopen the adjourned public hearing. Mr. Warkentine, just to be clear, the intent of this is to actually, this is my understanding, the intent of this is for the applicants or the developer to have less variations going forward when they do develop those lots. Is that correct?
That's what they indicated when they presented their information. It was to prevent further variance applications for lots that may not comply with their intended development.
Were there any other, that we hadn't heard any other reasons today? Were there any other reasons that you can think of that you see in the file?
I cannot speculate. All I can present for council is information that the applicant has presented at the hearing.
Thank you. All right, council, question, go ahead.
Okay, through you, Mr. Administration, if I'm correct, my memory serves me right, there were only 3 lots that were affected by these property lines anyways, right? And in the red there was, and then it came back down and it matched up the lots. So we're looking at possibly 3 variances.
My understanding is that
It's the first 3 lots and then it brings it back.
You'll see there's other variations after that.
my understanding is that those are the 3 obvious lots, but I do believe that there are other lot dimensions that are impacted by the public reserve closing being proposed. This particular sketch that you're seeing is not the official plan, nor is it to scale.
All right. Another mayoral candidate wishing to speak.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. According to the diagram there, or the picture, would there be, would that variance be required for backyard? Is that why the red line moved out, or?
I have not seen an application for a building permit, so I'm not sure the dimensions of anything. It may relate to the overall size of the lot and how the developer chooses to, intends to develop the lot.
All right. Councillor Swagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should move ahead with the second reading. And we're still in the public hearing, but I just want to say, I think we're basically at the point here where if we get new information, basically the question is going to be that if we don't have this realignment, then there will be more variances along the section here. In terms of proper planning, we want to have fewer variances and have it developed properly. And so I think we've kind of questioned to the point where we kind of know what the choice is ultimately going to be. and having fewer variances is better planning in the long run.
Okay, thank you. All right, having heard from the objectors, having heard from the applicant, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to open the council meeting. Councillor Swagster.
I'll make the motion for a second reading of, well, I guess,
Sorry,
do we want the two of them together, or like the first two together, or?
I will ask that you do
First one?
the Harmony Lane Public Reserve closing, and then we'll do each one separately,
Okay,
please.
so second reading on the Harmony Lane Public Reserve closing.
All right. Mr. Workney, is that second reading on the public lane closing, is that correct?
The public reserve closing, yes, that
Yes.
matter needs to be dealt with first.
Thank you. All right, is there a seconder? Councillor Penner. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The challenging situation, obviously, when you have a reconfiguration that impacts existing properties. These types of things do happen, and when you look at the overall planning process, we want to have obviously fewer variances as opposed to more. We want to have the planning done properly at the outset. We do have a new owner here, a new developer, and seeking to do the best they can to reconfigure in such a way that the lots actually fit the size that they're supposed to be. And so I think that we need to move ahead with allowing for the change. Council's already conditionally approved the new version of the subdivision, so there is that already that is in place. And if we don't do this, then I think we're putting up roadblocks to the area being developed properly.
Thank you. Councillor Penner?
Yes, I concur with Councillor Swagstra's comments. I think in light of what we do know and the impact that it may have in the future for variances, that this is the best route to go. It's not an easy decision. I haven't found it extremely clear or obvious, but I think the way to proceed is to have second reading and see where it goes from there.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Siemens?
I will vote against the motion. What this was a public hearing, and this was an opportunity for us to hear from the public and hear the various concerns. It's the only opportunity that the residents in that area had to raise concerns, and I think we need to listen to them. And it was to keep the lot lines at that intersection on that last lot on the north side, to keep it at the place where it was. I agree with Councillor Swagstra that we need to put it in place, and what the reasoning is behind it too, because it simplifies the process down the road for less variation requests and so on. But this was the only opportunity for the public to put input into this. So while the city, as a council, we approved the initial design and concept, this was the only place that we could get feedback from the general public, from the people who live in that area. I think we need to hear their voices.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Funk?
Yes, I will be voting against the motion too. Here we have a homeowner who before bought the property has done his homework. He's come to our city planner, he's looked, he said, they've been told by everybody, nothing's gonna happen back there, this is how it's gonna be, and now we're gonna go change it on him. I understand the whole thing about making sure that there's less variances and stuff, but for this homeowner who's done everything that we tell them to do before they buy something, he's done that, and that way that you ensure it's not gonna change, and now it's changing. For that reason, I'm voting against that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Fair?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to also vote against it because for some of the same reasons that we've already heard. I think we encourage, that's what public hearings are there to get the public's input, and if we don't take value their input enough, then I don't know why we have public hearings. That's one of the things. The other thing is if we would, I still think that there's a way that if the back lot line was moved in where the original lot line was, leave the other ones the way that the new one is proposed. If we could have done that, I think I could have supported it, and I think it would have solved this whole problem. So I'm hoping that maybe that's something that can still be resolved, because I think it'll address everybody's issue. It'll address the fact that they won't have to have variances for every lot, and so that was why my question was about the back, whether it was going to vary the back, because if we needed that extra space to vary it, I can understand. But I think in light of that, I think I won't support it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Anything in closing?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to make it clear that, a public hearing means that we take all the information into account. We do listen to neighbors if there are concerns. We listen to the developer presentation. We listen to administration. We look at plans, and we make an overall decision. I do think it's important to listen to the public. It's important to remember, however, that we don't cancel something automatically when there's an objection. We take all of the information into account. Rezonings happen. Variances do occur. Lot reconfigurations occur. And yes, they sometimes occur after the fact, and they affect existing homeowners. And sometimes we're faced with tough choices. This is not a particularly easy one. This is one that's difficult. That's why we've asked so many questions here this evening. At the end of the day, we have to ask what is the best step forward as far as planning for the area as a whole. And when you look at planning for the area as a whole, we want to make sure that lot configurations for the area have fewer rather than more variances, so that way that the neighborhood as a whole is properly designed. And so yes, it does mean there are some after-the-fact changes, but this does happen, and it does happen after public hearings. So I think it's important to keep that in mind when we vote.
Thank you. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll now move to motion on second reading in regards to bylaw 2013 rezoning. Motion for second reading, please. Councillor Swagstra, moved by Councillor Penner. Further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Rad. Don't really think it's necessary. It's connected to the previous one.
Thank you. Anything further? Anything further from council? Call for the question. All those in favor? Second reading. Thank you. We'll now move second reading, Variation V-2018, sorry, not second reading. Mr. Workentine, yes. We cannot give second reading to the variation.
Just a recommendation is that the council decision on this matter be held until the decision on the public reserve closing is dealt with.
Thank you. We will then wait for the minister to approve, and then we'll proceed. We will then make that decision I won't be making the decision on a later date, but some of you might be. So, all right. Thank you. We will now move to 12A, and that is Board of Revision, and we are on the cutoff of appointing a Board of Revision. Otherwise, it might have been some of us sitting there in a few weeks. We do have a recommendation going forward to appoint Jack Kaler, Dwight Reimer, and Roy Entz to the municipal, or sorry, not the municipal board, although that would be great. It's the Board of Revision. Can I have someone accept that recommendation? Move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. You have to be a former city manager or a former member of this council to sit on there. It seems that way anyway.
Are you hinting at
something?
things?
So please, but I think I'm not very available next year if you're wondering. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Yes. Councillor Fair, second by Councillor Penner. All those in favor?
Mr. Thor, paper.
Thank you very much.
Papers up.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
That's it.